You know that feeling when your own family treats you like you're invisible, like everything you've accomplished means absolutely nothing. Well, that was my life for 35 years. But sometimes the universe has a funny way of setting the record straight. And when it happened to me, let's just say nobody saw it coming. My name is Colonel Rebecca Hayes, and I'm 35 years old. After 8 years away from my hometown of Cedar Falls, Montana, I was finally coming home. The familiar sight of snow-capped mountains and endless plains should have filled me with warmth, but instead, my stomach churned with anxiety. I pulled my rental car into the driveway of the house where I grew up, a sprawling ranch-style home that screamed success. My father, William Hayes, had built his career as Vice President of Operations at Titan Defense Corporation, one of the largest military contractors in the region. My older brother Marcus worked there too, climbing the corporate ladder with the kind of ambition our parents had always celebrated. Me, I was the disappointment, the daughter who chose the military over business school, the one who threw away her potential by enlisting instead of pursuing an MBA. At least that's what they'd been telling me for the past 15 years. What they didn't know, what nobody in my family knew, was that I wasn't just any soldier anymore. I was Colonel Rebecca Hayes, Senior Military Liaison for the Department of Defense's largest active contract, the same contract that kept Titan Defense Corporation in business, the same contract that paid for this house, Marcus's BMW, and my parents' comfortable retirement fund. But I wasn't here to drop bombshells. I was here because my grandmother, the only person who'd ever believed in me, had passed away. I was here to pay my respects and maybe find some peace with my family. I grabbed my duffel bag from the trunk, deliberately leaving my dress uniform hanging in the back seat. Tonight was about family, not rank. The front door opened before I could knock. My mother, Helen, stood there with her perfectly styled blonde hair and designer sweater, looking exactly the same as she had 8 years ago. "Rebecca," she said, her smile tight and practiced. "You made it." "Hi, Mom." I stepped forward for a hug that felt more like a business handshake. "Your father and Marcus are in the study discussing some big project at work. You know how they are." She led me into the house, her voice carrying that familiar tone of dismissal whenever my career came up. "How are things with you?" she asked, but I could tell she was already mentally moving on to other topics. "Good, busy. That's nice, dear. Marcus just got promoted to Senior Project Manager. He's handling a massive government contract now. We're so proud." And there it was, less than 5 minutes home. And already I was being reminded of my brother's success, while my own achievements were brushed aside like dust. Dinner that evening was a masterclass in subtle humiliation. We sat around the mahogany dining table that had witnessed countless family meals, but tonight felt different. Tonight, I was acutely aware of my position as the outsider. "So, Rebecca," my father said, cutting into his steak with surgical precision, "still playing soldier, as if my 15 years of service, my multiple deployments, my Bronze Star, and my current rank were just an elaborate game." "I'm still serving, yes," I replied carefully. "That's nice," he said, the word dripping with condescension. "Marcus here is about to close the biggest deal in Titan's history. Aren't you, son?" Marcus straightened in his chair, practically glowing under our father's approval. "It's a $1.8 billion defense contract over 5 years. The Pentagon's been very impressed with our proposals." "1.8 billion, Mom repeated, shaking her head in amazement. "Can you imagine, Rebecca? Your brother is handling contracts worth more than some countries' entire budgets." I nearly choked on my wine. "If only they knew." "That's impressive," I managed to say. "It really is," Dad continued. "Marcus has been working directly with the military liaisons. Very high-level stuff. The kind of career that actually makes a difference in the world." The implication hung in the air like smoke. "Unlike your career, Rebecca. Unlike your meaningless little military job." Speaking of careers, Mom chimed in. Your cousin Jennifer just made partner at her law firm in Seattle, and Sarah's daughter graduated from Harvard Business School. Everyone's doing so well. Everyone except me, of course. What about you, Rebecca? Marcus asked. And for a moment, I thought he might actually be interested. Still stationed at that base in Colorado. Actually, I'm in Washington now. Pentagon assignment. Oh, Mom said, clearly unimpressed. Desk job, something like that. Well, Dad said, raising his glass, here's to Marcus and his success. We always knew you'd make us proud, son. They toasted my brother while I sat there invisible. 35 years old, decorated military officer, and I might as well have been furniture. You know, Rebecca, Dad said, as he set down his glass, it's not too late to get out of the military and do something meaningful with your life. Marcus could probably get you an entry-level position at Titan. You'd have to start at the bottom, of course, but I'm fine where I am, I interrupted. Are you, though? Mom asked, her voice dripping with false concern. I mean, what kind of future does the military really offer? You're 35, unmarried, no real career prospects. Helen, Dad said, putting a hand on her arm. Let's not pile on. I'm sure Rebecca is doing her best with the choices she's made. Doing my best. As if I were some charity case they needed to handle gently. The rest of dinner passed in a blur of Marcus's achievements, Dad's business stories, and Mom's updates on every successful person we'd ever known. I contributed nothing to the conversation because apparently I had nothing worth contributing. The next morning, I woke up in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by faded posters and participation trophies that suddenly felt like symbols of a life that had never quite measured up. At least, that's what my family thought. I checked my phone and saw 3 missed calls from General Patricia Morrison, my direct supervisor at the Pentagon. The 4th call came as I was getting dressed. Colonel Hayes, I answered. Rebecca, thank God. We have a situation with the Titan contract. Senator Williams is flying in for an emergency review of the project, and we need you at their headquarters today. My blood ran cold. Today, General, I'm on leave. I know, and I'm sorry, but you're the only one who knows this contract inside and out. The meeting is at 2 p.m. Can you make it? I looked at myself in the mirror. I could drive back to Denver, catch a flight to D.C. and handle this remotely. Or, actually, General, I'm in Cedar Falls. Titan's headquarters is 20 minutes from where I'm sitting. You're kidding. No, ma'am, I can be there. Perfect. And Rebecca, full dress uniform. We need to remind them exactly who they're dealing with. After I hung up, I sat on my bed for a long moment, staring at the garment bag I'd brought with me. Inside was my dress blue uniform, complete with all my ribbons, medals, and the silver eagles that marked my rank as colonel. I'd planned to keep my military life separate from this family visit, but sometimes the universe has other plans. I spent the morning preparing for what would either be the most professional meeting of my career or the most satisfying moment of my life. Probably both. My dress uniform was immaculate. Navy blue jacket with silver buttons, perfectly pressed trousers, and a chest full of ribbons that told the story of 15 years of exemplary service. The Bronze Star, the Meritorious Service Medal, the Joint Service Commendation Medal, and a dozen others. But the real showstopper was the rank insignia on my shoulders, the silver eagles of a full colonel. At 35, I was one of the youngest officers to achieve this rank in my field. It had taken years of proving myself, of being better than everyone around me, of sacrificing personal relationships for professional excellence. My family had no idea. As I drove toward Titan Defense Corporation's headquarters, I called my assistant back in D.C. Lieutenant Rodriguez, I need you to pull the complete file on the Titan contract. Every document, every communication, every performance review. Yes, ma'am. Should I email them to you? No, I have them memorized. I just want to make sure we have everything documented for the senator's review. Colonel, if you don't mind me asking, is everything okay? You sound different. I smiled grimly. Everything's about to be very okay, Lieutenant. The Titan building loomed ahead of me, a gleaming monument to defense contracting success. I'd driven past it countless times, as a teenager never imagining I'd one day hold their entire operation in my hands. I parked in the visitors section and took a deep breath. Time to remind everyone exactly who Colonel Rebecca Hayes was. The lobby of Titan Defense Corporation was designed to intimidate. Marble floors, soaring ceilings, and walls lined with photos of military hardware and important handshakes. I walked to the reception desk in my full dress uniform, my heels clicking authoritatively on the polished stone. Colonel Hayes, to see Mr. Peterson, I told the receptionist presenting my military ID. Her eyes widened as she took in my rank and ribbons. Of course, Colonel, right away. Within minutes, James Peterson, Titan's CEO, appeared in the lobby. I'd spoken with him dozens of times over the phone, but never met him in person. He was a tall, silver-haired man who carried himself with the confidence of someone used to being the most important person in the room. Today, he wasn't. Colonel Hayes, he said, extending his hand with genuine respect. It's an honor to finally meet you in person. Mr. Peterson, thank you for accommodating this last-minute meeting. Of course, Senator Williams' office called ahead. They said this was regarding the performance review of our current contract. That's correct. There are some concerns at the Pentagon level that need to be addressed. As we walked toward the elevator, I noticed several employees stopping to stare. It wasn't every day a full colonel in dress uniform walked through their lobby. I should mention, Peterson said, as we rode up to the executive floor, we have several of our senior staff joining us today, including our VP of Operations and his son who's been instrumental in managing this contract. My heart skipped a beat. William Hayes and Marcus Hayes. You know them. We've crossed paths. The elevator doors opened, and Peterson led me down a hallway lined with conference rooms. Through the glass walls, I could see the meeting room ahead, and my stomach clenched as I recognized the figures inside. Dad sat at the head of the table in his best suit, looking every inch the successful executive. Marcus was beside him, gesturing animatedly as he spoke to several other Titan employees. They were clearly in their element, confident and comfortable. That was about to change. Gentlemen, Peterson announced as we entered the room, I'd like you to meet Colonel Rebecca Hayes, our Pentagon liaison for the Titan contract. The room fell silent. Every conversation stopped mid-sentence. But nothing compared to the look on my father's face when he saw me standing there in full military dress, silver eagles gleaming on my shoulders. Rebecca, he whispered, his voice barely audible. Marcus's mouth fell open. What? How? Good afternoon, Mr. Hayes, I said, formally extending my hand to my father. Mr. Hayes, I nodded to Marcus. Gentlemen. For a moment, nobody moved. The silence stretched until Peterson cleared his throat. Please, everyone take your seats. Colonel Hayes has some important matters to discuss regarding our contract performance. I moved to the head of the table, opposite my father, setting down my briefcase with practiced precision. Every eye in the room was on me, but I was focused on the two men who had spent their lives telling me I'd never amount to anything. Thank you all for being here. I began my voice, carrying the authority of 15 years of military leadership. I'm here today to conduct a comprehensive review of Titan Defense Corporation's performance on contract number DoD 2024-7751. I opened my briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. This contract, valued at $1.8 billion over 5 years, represents one of the Department of Defense's largest active procurement agreements. Marcus was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Dad looked like he was trying to solve a complex equation in his head. As the senior military liaison for this contract, I continued, I've been monitoring Titan's performance across all deliverables. Today's review will determine whether this contract continues as planned or requires modification. The word modification hung in the air like a threat. Everyone in the room knew that contract modifications could mean anything from reduced scope to complete termination. Now, I said, opening the folder, let's begin with the technical specifications for the communications array project. Mr. Marcus Hayes, I believe you've been the primary point of contact for this component. Marcus nodded mutely. Excellent. Can you walk me through the current status of deliverable 70A, specifically the encrypted communication protocols? For the next hour, I conducted the most thorough contract review of my career. I questioned every detail, challenged every assumption, and demonstrated a level of technical knowledge that left the entire room speechless. But more than that, I was professional, respectful, completely by the book. I was everything they'd never given me credit for being. The performance metrics are generally satisfactory, I concluded, though there are areas for improvement. Mr. Peterson, I'll need a detailed remediation plan within 30 days. Of course, Colonel, whatever you need. Excellent. I closed the folder and stood. That concludes today's review. Thank you all for your time. As the other attendees filed out, Dad and Marcus remained seated, still staring at me in shock. Rebecca, Dad finally said, we had no idea. No, I replied calmly, you didn't. After the room cleared, it was just the three of us. Father, son, and the daughter they'd underestimated for 35 years. How long? Marcus asked quietly. How long what? How long have you been this? He gestured at my uniform, my rank, my obvious authority. I've been a colonel for 2 years. I've been the liaison for your contract for 3 years. I've been serving my country with distinction for 15 years. Dad leaned back in his chair, his face pale. The Pentagon assignment you mentioned. I'm the Deputy Director of Defense Procurement Liaison. I oversee $2.3 billion in active contracts. Jesus, Marcus whispered. All those times you told me to get a real job. I continued, my voice steady but sharp. I was already responsible for more money than you'll see in your entire career. Rebecca, we didn't know. You didn't know because you never asked. You never cared enough to find out what I actually do. Dad stood up slowly, his hands shaking slightly. Your mother, she's going to what? Be proud, finally respect her daughter's choices. We've always been proud. No, I cut him off. You've been disappointed. You've been embarrassed. You've spent 15 years treating me like a failure because I didn't follow the path you chose for me. Marcus found his voice. But why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you say something? I looked at my brother, this man who'd basked in our parents' approval while I'd been dismissed and ignored. When would I have told you? During dinner last night, when you were all toasting Marcus's success. When Dad suggested I get an entry-level job at the company I actually oversee, the silence that followed was deafening. I didn't tell you, I said, finally, because I shouldn't have had to. You should have believed in me without seeing the uniform. You should have respected my choices without knowing my rank. You should have loved me without needing proof that I was worthy of it. Dad's eyes filled with tears. Rebecca, I'm so sorry. I know you are, but sorry doesn't erase 35 years of feeling like I wasn't good enough for my own family. The drive home was surreal. I'd spent years imagining what it would feel like to prove my worth to my family, but the reality was more complicated than I'd expected. There was satisfaction, yes, but also sadness. Sadness that it had taken a uniform and a rank to earn their respect. When I walked into the house, Mom was in the kitchen preparing dinner. She looked up with a smile that faltered when she saw my expression. How was your day, honey? Before I could answer, Dad and Marcus walked in behind me. The look on their faces told the whole story. What's wrong? Mom asked, her voice rising with concern. What happened? Helen. Dad said quietly, we need to talk. For the next hour, my parents and brother listened as I explained my career, my rank, and my role in their company's success. Mom cried. Dad apologized repeatedly. Marcus just sat there processing the fact that his little sister outranked him in every way that mattered. "I don't understand," Mom kept saying. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Because you never asked," I replied. "In 15 years, not one of you ever asked me what I actually do for a living." "We thought," she trailed off. "You thought I was a failure. You thought I'd wasted my life. You thought I was nothing." The words hung in the air like an accusation. "We were wrong," Dad said finally. "We were so incredibly wrong." Over the next few days, something shifted in our family dynamic. My parents started asking questions, real questions about my work, my life, my experiences. Marcus admitted that he'd always felt competitive with me, even when he thought he was winning. "I was jealous," he confessed one evening as we sat on the back porch. "Even when I thought you were just a regular soldier, I was jealous of how brave you were, how you'd chosen your own path." I never knew that. I couldn't admit it. It was easier to go along with Mom and Dad's narrative that you'd made a mistake. And now, he smiled ruefully. "Now I realize my little sister could probably have me court-martialed if she wanted to. I would never." "I know, but the fact that you could, it's humbling." Mom struggled the most with the revelation. She'd built her identity around being the mother of a successful son and a disappointing daughter. Now she had to reconcile that with the reality of having raised two successful children. "I failed you," she said one morning over coffee. "I failed as a mother." "You didn't fail. You just lost sight of what success looks like. How can you forgive us?" "Because you're my family. Because everyone makes mistakes. Because holding on to anger would only hurt me more." But forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It didn't mean pretending the hurt hadn't happened. 6 months later, I was back in Cedar Falls for Marcus's wedding. This time things were different. This time when people asked what I did for a living, my parents answered with pride. "Our daughter is a colonel in the Army." Mom would say, her voice filled with genuine admiration. "She oversees billions of dollars in defense contracts." Dad had my military portrait framed and sitting on his desk at work. Marcus introduced me to his fiancée as "my sister the badass." But the real change wasn't in how they talked about me to others. It was in how they talked to me. They asked about my deployments, my responsibilities, my future goals. They listened when I talked about the challenges of military life, the sacrifices I'd made, the pride I felt in serving my country. For the first time in my adult life, I felt seen by my family. At Marcus's reception, Dad asked me to give a toast. I stood up in my dress uniform. I'd worn it specifically because Marcus had asked me to, and looked out at the crowd of family and friends. "When we were kids," I began, "Marcus and I were always competing. Who could run faster? Who could climb higher? Who could make our parents prouder?" The crowd chuckled. For a long time, I thought Marcus was winning. He got the grades our parents wanted, chose the career they approved of, followed the path they'd laid out for him. Marcus smiled at me from the head table. But I've learned something important over the years. There's no such thing as winning when it comes to family. There's only love, support, and the courage to be who you're meant to be. I raised my glass. "Marcus, you've always been an amazing brother, even when we didn't understand each other. And Sarah, you're getting a man who knows how to work hard, how to stay loyal, and how to eventually admit when his little sister outranks him." The crowd erupted in laughter. To Marcus and Sarah, and to families that learn to grow together. A year later, I was promoted to Brigadier General, the youngest woman in my field to achieve that rank. The promotion ceremony was held at the Pentagon with full military honors. My entire family was there. Mom cried through the whole thing. Dad stood at attention, like he was the one being promoted. Marcus brought his new wife and their baby daughter, who slept peacefully through the entire ceremony. Afterward, at the reception, a young officer approached me. "General Hayes, I just wanted to say thank you. My family never understood my choice to serve either. Seeing you here with your family supporting you, it gives me hope." I looked across the room at my parents, who were proudly showing pictures of me to anyone who would listen. At Marcus, who was telling his daughter about her Aunt Becky the General. It takes time, I told the young officer. But sometimes the people who love us just need to see us clearly. And sometimes we need to help them see. As I write this, I'm sitting in my office at the Pentagon, looking at a photo from Marcus's wedding. In it, our whole family is laughing at something Dad said. We look happy. We look like we belong together. The truth is, I didn't need my family's approval to be successful. I didn't need their recognition to find value in my service. I'd built a career, earned respect, and made a difference in the world without their support. But having it now, having them see me for who I really am, that's worth more than any promotion or medal. The night of that family dinner, when they said I was nothing, they were wrong. But they weren't malicious, they were just limited. Limited by their own definitions of success, their own fears about unconventional choices, their own inability to see past their expectations. When Dad's boss called me ma'am that day at Titan, it wasn't just about military protocol. It was about respect. It was about recognition. It was about finally being seen. But the real victory wasn't in proving them wrong. The real victory was in staying true to myself, even when the people I loved most couldn't see my worth. Because at the end of the day, the most important person who needs to believe in you is you. Everyone else, they'll catch up eventually. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever been told your dreams don't matter, remember this: your worth isn't determined by other people's ability to see it. Keep serving, keep growing. Keep being exactly who you're meant to be. The recognition will come, but more importantly, you'll know who you are, with or without it. Subscribe for more stories about finding your strength, proving your worth, and the power of staying true to yourself. New inspiring family stories every week.